Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Ko, and I will be your storyteller. This here will be a story of a not-so-evil campaign, a DM entirely changing the players' characters' stories, and, of course, getting fired from your job because of D&D. Oh, that's a new one. Without further ado, let us begin. Workplace sanctioned D&D. What could go wrong? By the author, Ars Torok. Before we begin, some context is needed. I have always had the same friend group, and that continues to this day. Plus or minus a few friends here and there. Through a long plan concocted by a few of us, close to 20 people, including friends, friends of friends, and significant others, all got hired at the same tech support company. The company was signing new clients every day, and things were rapidly expanding. By the end of the story, half the people in the building were people I knew before I started working there. One of us made into a manager. The whole team was moved to a new, larger building, complete with a 14-person conference room. The room had a massive table, chairs, a projector, and a mini fridge. And absolutely no purpose. We were there to support folks. No one visited us. Meetings with clients were held in the admin building down the street. So our manager asked permission to run a D&D game on weekends, when the completely unused conference room would defiantly be extra not used. The admins gave their blessings, so long as we were not loud enough to distract those actually working, and only employees of the company were in the game. Or at least in the conference room. Security reasons and all that. They seemed to think that the game could serve as a free team-building exercise and would occasionally send pizza or whatever. What could go wrong? There were a total of 8 people in this campaign, but only 3 matter for this story, and honestly, I'm not really one of them. Our cast. The manager. Our DM. The orchestrator of our grand adventure. Stacy, longtime member of the friend group. Steve, one of the newest members of the friend group and of the company. He lets us know that he has tons of TTRPG experience, but has never done a game of D&D, and doesn't know the setting lore. Everyone is excited, and the manager starts to write out the story. He tells us that he is going to run the most ambitious game of his life. And it will be an evil campaign. Most of us were veterans, and we had all talked about how fun and how hard it was to run an evil campaign. If everyone is evil, then party fighting is not only common, but sometimes encouraged, and this can lead to sore feelings and untimely deaths. But it was also an opportunity to try out classes and subclasses and domains that you normally don't get to play. And the manager promised us exactly that. A party of the worst that the world had to offer. Not motivated by a collective feeling of righteousness and goodwill, but instead loosely held together with the promise of wealth, women/men, power, and edge. We were told anything goes, as long as it's evil. Do your worst, bring your biggest monster. We're all adults here, and it's time we played like adults. We all agreed this campaign was going to get evil. And probably not safe for work. At work. Yeah, we didn't think this through. So, the campaign was set in Menzoberranzan, I hope I pronounced it right, the most well-known drow city in D&D lore. And the DM cautioned us that since this was going to be a hardcore evil game, racism, in-game, not out-of-game, was going to be prevalent. The Drow are not the most inclusive bunch, and he was going to roleplay the world as it is described in the books. All of us took the hint and made Drow characters. Everyone except Steve. He was a human. We explained the situation to him, and he decided to make a human fighter that was a gladiatorial slave. It was actually kind of clever and fit in well. Session 0 wraps up nicely, and we all can't sleep out of excitement for Session 1. We start in a marketplace. Suddenly all the exits are blocked by guards who won't let anyone out. There is the sound of marching as nothing short of a small army of mercenaries, slaves, and kobolds with sharp sticks are funneled into the market by the guards. Everyone is pressed in on all sides, and then the army starts to murder everyone without discrimination. Each of our party is somewhere, all doing various market things. We each start defending ourselves when a voice calls out, "With me!" It is a tall, beautiful, in a totally cool old guy regal way, you guys. Strong, handsome, muscular, so the DMPC calls out to the whole market. "Those that can fight, hold them off. Those that can heal, tend to the injured. Leave the dead, the rest to me." And then he starts making an XXL teleportation circle, while also projecting a divine shield around the poor defenseless market-goers. Throughout the entire campaign, we never got a straight answer to the classes that the DMPC had. We have to survive 5 rounds holding back an army while he makes the circle so we can escape. Our resident sorcerer assists in making the circle, cutting it down to 3 rounds, and we escape. Beaten to a bloody pulp, but with no one actually dead. The whole party teleports. Several sharp-stick kobolds come along for the ride. They are quickly slaughtered by more city guards, but with cool, mysterious badges, at our destination. One kobold surrenders and instantly becomes the party mascot. The DMPC offers us a job. Free room and board, plus travel expenses, on top of a salary and the standard "what you loot is yours" clause at the end. Everyone signs up and session wraps. The manager promises us that the DMPC will sit at his desk and hand out quests rather than come along and do our jobs for us. Think of him as a manager. Hopes are high, everyone is mostly happy, and this looks like it's going to be tons of fun. What followed was several months of confusion. We learned that the DMPC wanted to depose Loth, Queen of Spiders and Goddess of the Drow, and install Vyraun in her place as primary god of Drow. The DMPC takes some time to explain the political and socio-economic ramifications of this undertaking for Steve's benefit, as he is the only person not up to speed on the lore. We all chime in, respectfully, filling in other details about the world and Drow culture. However, the DM painstakingly corrects us on a few details. Anyone who has seen the official artwork of Vyraun knows he is not only Loth's son, but also a rather edgy boy whose primary motivation is sorting out his mommy issues by way of knives and other sharp stabby things. He is a chaotic evil deity who is unpredictable and doesn't play well with others. However, the DM talked about Vyraun as if he was a noble, lawful paragon of justice against evil mothers everywhere. This is where the campaign gets weird. We learn that our DMPC is a lawful good paladin of Vyraun and wants nothing less than rainbows and kittens in every home of Menzoberranzan. And while we are under his employ, we are expected to do the same. No extra evil, no extracurricular murder. Just do the job and be Boy Scouts while doing it. Leave no trace and all that. We were told, verbatim, "You can be evil, but while you work for me, you will do no evil." This is not quite the evil campaign that was advertised. So, the party assassin cannot assassinate people. Or at least he can take contracts to kill people, which was his backstory. He is allowed to kill people, but only if they are evil, and they attack him first, and we are supposed to kill them for the mission we are on. The cleric can't worship Loth anymore, and has to convert to worshipping Vyron. Ailestray is an acceptable alternative. I am not railroading you, I promise. The warlock needs to try to get a patron that isn't a devil. Maybe an archfey or a celestial. The DMPC knows a few angels. It's fine, we can figure it out. The party finds itself in an awkward position. We are in a D&D game. At work, where the DM is basically forcing rewrites to all of our characters under the guise of, "I'm not changing your backstory, just your current story. It's character growth." Also, the DM is literally our boss, controls our schedules, and has the power to fire us. We keep playing. For months, the game continues. But every time anyone gets a little too evil in a city where everyone is evil, the DMPC shows up and politely chastises them before handing out snacks and running off again. The enthusiasm is gone, but most of us stick with it. 2 people drop when their characters die, leaving us at 6. This is where Stacy and Steve come in. Their characters have been enjoying a somewhat one-sided romance. Steve's character is stunned by Stacy's character's beauty and independence. Stacy's character thinks that Steve's character is adorable in the same way a puppy is. But a romance of sorts takes place and starts to grow. The 2 become stronger friends outside of the game. After some time developing, Steve has his character propose to Stacy's. He gets down on one knee and seems to be role-playing, addressing Stacy by her character's name and talking about their shared adventures, and how he likes being at her side. Even if that means in this world being at your feet. Then he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a box with a ring, and proposes to Stacy then and there, in front of all of us. No one speaks. No one moves. We just sit there and watch. After realizing what was actually happening, Stacy closes the ring box and offers a bit of a compromise. Their characters would get married in the game. However, if Steve wanted to marry her, he had to date her first and truly get to know her, and not just her character. The 2 start dating, and the rest of us breathe a collective sigh of relief. The manager gives each character a magic item as a wedding present. Stacy receives a cool animated snake whip, and Steve receives a thundering halberd. The game itself deteriorates as time moves on. The quests become repetitive. Go to the place, sneak inside, steal the MacGuffin, kill the bad guy of the week, and try to sneak out. Each time the mission would go the same way. We would sneak in, get to the MacGuffin vault, realize that the only way to open it was a key held by the bad guy of the week. Then we get caught trying to sneak to the bad guy's room, usually because of Steve's halberd, thundering. Guards would materialize out of the woodwork. We would kill everything in sight, except for the obligatory "I just work here man" meat, cook, whatever that always happened to be standing in fireball range for the rest of the baddies. We would be battered and bruised as we walked into the boss room, and the boss would TPK us. Except they wouldn't. The boss would never deal a killing blow, and instead just downed us. Once the whole party was down, the DMPC would show up, one-shot the boss, then heal everyone. He would toss us the key to the vault while tossing the MacGuffin up and down in his free hand. What would follow would be what I think was supposed to be an encouraging pep talk and suggestions for how to improve ourselves. It always came off as belittling, and always broke the fourth wall to the point that the manager was just telling us how to play our classes. We head back to the vault to grab our loot, and every time the pedestal that was supposed to contain the MacGuffin would have some treats and a sticky note letting us know the DMPC still loved us and had high hopes for us next time. Basically, the manager was annoyed that we couldn't beat his encounter, so he kept reworking it and just running us through it again. The setting and names and MacGuffin would change, but it was the same session for around a month or so. We plead with Steve to not use the halberd when we are trying to sneak. We bring up all the times where there's plenty of opportunity to go thundering about when we are not trying to be stealthy. We also beg the manager for more encounters that are not stealth dependent so Steve can get some much needed halberd time in. But no. Same session, different week. Stacy and Steve move in together, start sharing a ride, and start using the games as an excuse to hang out rather than participate. Stacy still keeps tabs on what's going on and would chime in when her name was called, but Steve basically stopped paying attention to anything but combat. Finally, we move forward. The MacGuffin this time is a bag of magic dust with magic properties unlike any you've ever seen. Whatever. Sneak, 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 stab, stab, stab. The cleric has silence on Steve's halberd, so he can hack and slash with impunity, and we manage to get to the boss room without triggering the alarm. The boss goes down super easily, since he was unprepared and didn't have his gear on him. And we head off to the vault, which was a magic waterfall this time, that you need a magic stone to open? Whatever, water turns off, we grab the magic bag and the loot and head home. The DMPC is fascinated by the magic dust and says he will look into it. We do some side shopping and RP, and then the next session we get our next quest. We are going to the surface to mine a bunch of magic dust from a cave that the DMPC found. We have a crew of 20 dwarves going with us to mine the rocks. We are just going with them to keep them safe. So, outside the cave is a forest that is infested with trolls. The sorcerer uses illusion magic to hide the entrance to the cave, but the manager just stops him because it would break the encounter. What we have is a session of basically fighting wave after wave of trolls, but quietly so we don't alert the rest of the trolls. The party cuts down a few trees to make a barricade since the illusion idea won't work. Steve uses his thundering halberd to help chop down trees. Everyone, DM included, reminds him that we need to be stealthy, and the cleric runs over with a silence spell, having learned from many previous sessions that Steve doesn't like being told not to use his halberd. Steve is adamant that he uses the halberd before the cleric gets there, and even tried to roll initiative to see who would go first, him or the cleric. The DM gives up, the halberd thunders, and we are up to our eyes in trolls. We are all dead by the second round. Steve insists he did nothing wrong, and that all the planning and politics are boring and he wanted to skip to the fight. He and the DM get into an argument over his fun versus everyone's fun. They start shouting at each other, and soon we remember that we are at work. There is a full support center outside with people on phones who can hear this argument. One of our co-workers barges in to shush all of us, since clients can hear us. The manager turns to Steve and fires him on the spot for causing an argument. Steve argues even louder that he isn't on the clock and they can fire him. Everyone but the manager, Stacy, and Steve flee from the scene and head home. The aftermath. The admin building gets several complaints from customers about hearing swearing and arguing in the background of their calls. Steve is the first of us to work the next morning. He is swiftly fired, not because of the manager's decision, but because of his actions afterward. The manager himself hears about this, and puts in his 2 weeks before going to work the next day. He is told to go ahead and clean out his desk. According to HR, he resigned, but he didn't show up a day of his last 2 weeks. The conference room door was locked by the custodial staff the next morning, and to my knowledge, it remains locked to this day. Steve and Stacy drove home the night of the argument and fought the whole way home, with Steve insisting that it was her duty to back him up in the argument. She gets mad and leaves him, moving on to a friend's couch for a week or two while she finds a new place to live. Years later, she actually marries this friend, and they have been happily married since. She still refuses to join our games of D&D. The manager actually continued the campaign with the 4 of us remaining, and it nosedived into the ground. It might be worth a story in its own right, but that is all for now. TLDR. A manager tries to run D&D at work, he gets into an argument with a player, and the 2 are promptly fired. That was quite a ride, goodness. So, apologies, first off, if I pronounce any of the gods' names wrong, or the places. I could swear it was Lolth, not Loth, but I could be wrong. I've never really played much with canon D&D characters in the campaigns I've been in, so... Okay. Several things. 1. Do not tell your players to make evil characters for an evil campaign when you do not intend to allow them to be evil. And, additionally, try and change them completely. Just tell them to be good guys from the get-go then. What was the point of any of that? Look, sometimes players of evil characters want their characters to develop and shift from bad to good. Have a little character arc of their own and whatnot. But you can't do that forcibly. That completely defeats player agency and effectively makes them the DM's character now. And that's not even getting into the DMPC. I think there's just very few people who can actually make that work. 2. Never play D&D with your boss. Ever. Period. Even if they are your friend. You see all the stuff that usually happens in RPG horror stories? Couple that with the fact that every time you argue with that person in-game, you have to keep in mind that they are your IRL boss, who could fire you from your actual job. I do not think I have to explain why that is an all-around bad time. 3, and this is a smaller one, but not really. Just who proposes to someone they haven't even dated before? Also, again, even if you have been friends before. Was he in character proposing to her character? Like, only that? Or was he actually proposing to her? Because if so, then the outcome of it was really the best it could have been for Steve in that situation, even if that didn't help him later on. 4. This actually leading to people getting fired is just sad. I mean, oftentimes it is the case that whatever happens in RPG horror stories has real-life consequences, but this is that to quite a big degree. all over a TTRPG and a thundering halberd. With that story over, let us move on to our next and last segment. The Exhibition Journal, where I display the fan art you make for this channel. Today, we have a piece done by Novatonics, who some of you may be familiar with. Great girl and a great artist to top it off, who's drawn a picture of us avian RPG horror stories folk. Look, I know the misconceptions of owls and crows not getting along, but I promise Crow and I have no bad blood between us. Now, I love Nova's art as is, but I continue to be amazed that she can draw animals and throw, whether it be fur feathers or scales. Teach me your ways. If you want to see more, her socials are displayed on screen and linked in the description below, which is also where you'll find the link to my Discord, where you can submit fan art of your own if you so desire. Or, if you do not have Discord, then feel free to send them to my email address linked in my About section. That was it for today. I hope you enjoyed your stay and that I will see you again soon, for there are always more stories to be shared.